This presentation will primarily be helpful to you after you've read the first canto of Book 1. I'm mainly going to point out specific passages and ideas that will help you as you read through the remaining cantos on your own. The first 4 cantos act as a preface to the epic. It opens with an invocation of the Muse, which is how every epic poem begins. Muses were the 9 daughters of Zeus who inspired artists. The poet does not believe that his skill is capable of describing the great deeds and heroic characters of these events. So Spenser asks the Muse for trumpets stern to change mine oaten reeds. He closes by asking the Muse to shed thy fair beams into my feeble eyne, and raise my thoughts too humble and too vile, to think of that glorious type of thine, the argument of mine afflicted style, the which to hear vouchsafe, O dearest, dread awhile. Much like the sonnets you read last week, the poet needs some kind of inspiration from without, not just within, in order to compose a work of such magnitude. In this case, Spenser, the poet, keeps demeaning his gifts and pointing out how inadequate they are for writing a story this powerful. He has an afflicted style and needs the help of the Muse in order to make this come to fruition. Frankly, I don't buy it. It's a gesture of false humility, but it's just that, a gesture. I have few doubts that Spenser knew he could pull this off. Reading the description of the lovely lady in the 4th stanza, we can see one of the central devices that Spenser stages throughout the language of the poem: oppositions. Una is wearing white and rides on a lowly ass that's also white. The first 4 lines set up the external virginal purity and truth. Yet look at the next 4. The black stole shows the appearance and reality aren't exactly the same. Her black stole reflects that she is one who inly mourns. Look also at the conflicted nature of Red Cross, but of his cheer did seem too solemn sad, or the description of error as having half the shape of a woman. Adding to this duality, appearance and reality are rarely the same, particularly in the case of Archimago. Also think about the fair lady Una versus the dream seductress that Archimago enchants Red Cross's mind with. In the later cantos, this becomes even more pivotal. Since this is an allegory, you should keep your eye out for abstractions. If a word is abstract, it means it exists in thought, but does not have a concrete existence. These words take on meaning from the poet or the character who uses them. So in this case, what you're going to see are abstractions that come to life, concepts that take on human or animal form. And you'll also see this in descriptions where someone is represented as an ideal beauty or maybe a false beauty. Let's take, for instance, beauty. Here's the first use of it in Canto 1. And she herself of beauty sovereign queen, fair Venus seemed unto his bed to bring, her whom he waking evermore did ween, to be the chastest flower that I did spring. However, look carefully at this passage. This is referring to the false dream vision of Una. In this case, beauty is a surface value that can be used to delude and tempt. It is artificial in the sense that Red Cross only sees this beauty when caught in Archimago's enchanted dream. Here's another example. When we say someone has virtue, we usually mean they have an upright moral character. But one of the great debates of the 16th century is whether virtue is universal or based on a specific situation. Take, for instance, chapter 25 of The Prince that you read 2 weeks ago in Machiavelli, where he talks about fortune. In this case, are the strict moral codes that rule the way we should live, are they there? Or are those codes contingent on a specific cultural moment? Do we respond to something, and does that show our virtue, rather than we realize something that exists far above us? The first appearance of virtue suggests that virtue is transcendent, even holy. It's like a light that guides you through darkness, as opposed to a practical decision you should make. As Red Cross walks into the cave to confront error, he will know good from evil by its obvious appearance. He will not have to spend a lot of time interpreting it. Virtue gives herself light, through darkness for to wade. However, Spencer may challenge this later, or another character may offer a different interpretation of virtue, beauty, loyalty, compassion, and look to it error. Not only is error a monster, but she vomits books and pamphlets, and when she is killed, her children lap up her blood until they burst. When Red Cross attacks, error wraps him in her tail. This is a very specific portrait of error. It recreates itself and is a kind of addiction. When you get to the House of Pride, you'll see these abstractions come to life in some of the most memorable series of images in literature. Now let's think about the dream that Archimago gives Red Cross. This is a particularly beautiful piece of writing, in my opinion. It's another example of an opposition, as the pure thoughts of Red Cross are perverted by the magician's spells. Yet this vivid nightmare causes Red Cross to react in the worst way, abandoning Una and leaving on what will be a dark quest. Dreams occupy a fascinating place in literature. As Sigmund Freud argued, they often reveal things about the true feelings and obsessions of the dreamer. We are often led to interpret the dream in terms of the obvious symbols or images that make themselves apparent. Dreams have no real logic, rarely offer a perceptible pattern, and often leave the awakened dreamer to rationalize what they mean. Dreams are in many ways the ultimate abstraction, meaningless unless we give meaning to them. When Red Cross wakes at the beginning of Canto 2, he immediately attempts to make sense of the dream. Spurred on by the deceitful Archimago, Red Cross is filled with torment great and bitter anguish. The poet will later describe Archimago cackling and praising his devilish arts, that had such might over true meaning hearts. Yet rest not so, but other means doth make. This is a significant passage, because it recognizes a new kind of error. The error of the earlier scene was something that was easily noticeable. This error is very deceiving. It has deceptive qualities that will lure in its captive prey and distort their minds. There is a true meaning, the poet tells us, but it can be misinterpreted or perverted by the deceptive powers of Archimago. So be thinking about these abstractions and see not only what they mean to the characters in a specific moment, but also what they might mean to Spencer. What might Spencer's overall definition be of virtue? Maybe this is a way of illustrating the moral virtues, but doing it in a way that Spencer is gleaning from other texts or from the past, from sources like the Bible or even Greek literature or the English romances. Finally, I want to point out where most of the pictures I used came from. If you go to this website, I'll post it in the announcements, you'll see a wonderful 1916 children's book called Stories from the Faerie Queen by Mary McLeod. It's not only great for the pictures, but also for the shortened version of the story, which you should read, of course, after you read the poem.